So, I already felt like I had milked this topic enough. Max Pacioretty got traded to the Carolina Hurricanes for future considerations. The Golden Knights pretty much traded him away for nothing. And by proxy, it means that the Golden Knights traded away a whole bunch of picks, plus Nick Suzuki, for nothing as well, since if you follow the Pacioretty acquisition to Vegas, that's kind of how the cookie crumbles now. But I didn't think we'd be making another video about this. I swear to goodness gracious, I did not think that would be the case. We are talking about, though, the Vegas Golden Knights, and not just the Pacioretty trade, but also the Golden Knights as a team, and what Max Pacioretty said about this organization on the Raw Knuckles podcast with Chris Nyland and Tim Stapleton. The link will be in the description if you want to go ahead and listen to this episode. It's the 14th episode of the show. It's got Max Pacioretty on as a guest, but we're also going to link an article to yahoosports.ca, because what they did here, or what Thomas Hall did, the writer here, was he summarized a lot of the quotes that Pacioretty had on the podcast into a written text format that we can screenshot, put on the screen, and review for you. So, without further ado, let's go over Max Pacioretty and just the body of work that he did first and foremost with the Vegas Golden Knights, because I definitely do think you have to acknowledge that this guy was a very talented and legitimate hockey player in that organization, which I'm not really too surprised about. I mean, we all kind of knew he was a talented player. Pacioretty, though, is 33 years old. He's making $7 million a year. He's got one more year left. That contract expires in 2023. Last season with the Vegas Golden Knights, Pacioretty was under a point per game, getting 37 points in 39 games. His best season with Vegas came in 2019-20, where he had 66 points in 71 games. Now, the entire body of work that he's had with this team was pretty point per game-ish territory the entire way through. He didn't play a significant chunk of games in certain seasons, which is why he did not max out at a full 70 or an 80-point year, but still, Pacioretty was an effective goal-scoring player that was traded for nothing, and when it comes to the initial trade, which sent him from Montreal to Vegas in 2018, there were some comments that Pacioretty made on the podcast that highlight just the big differences that he felt in terms of the way the organizations were perceived in the public. Now, I want to say this as well before we go over the quotes, because Max Pacioretty, when he was on the podcast, there were actually some clips of the podcast floating around on Instagram, and you could see Pacioretty talking about players like Nick Suzuki, for example, and he's so open, so articulate, and so willing to talk about this stuff, which is a big shift from what a lot of Canadiens fans remember from when Max Pacioretty was the captain in Montreal. You gotta remember, when you're in a big Canadian market with the fans and the media as hyped up about everything as Montreal could be, sometimes when you're the captain there, you just can't really let yourself go. You have to really watch everything you say. Make sure you don't say anything that could be bordering on the territory of wrong. Don't say anything that could slightly hint that you feel any frustration towards your coach or your management or your line mates. You gotta be really careful, because you're under the microscope with every comment you make. And so for Pacioretty, he was the captain of the Montreal Canadiens for, 3 seasons before getting traded, and so he was kind of at the forefront when it came to that sort of pressure and expectation and media availability, etc., etc. And so when he got traded over to Vegas, you can kind of understand a lot more where he's coming from when he says these comments on the podcast. This is what Pacioretty admitted he experienced. It was a weird feeling shortly after being traded to the Golden Knights in 2018. It was something he hadn't encountered previously in his lengthy NHL career. When I first got to Vegas, it was weird that there was, no accountability. And I'm not talking about the team. I'm talking about, ever. You couldn't feel pressure coming off anyone else, from the coach to the management. There was a relief when I got there. But then I found myself being like, I've got to reel this in and hold myself to a higher standard, which I had always done. But maybe I got away with it when I had everyone else holding me accountable in Montreal. This article on yahoosports.ca talks about how it's no secret that Canadian hockey fans hold their teams to a much higher standard compared to most American markets, but it's rare to hear a player in any sport lament the lack of external pressure. This is what Pacioretty is talking about. The Golden Knights missed the playoffs last year for the first time in their existence, which its fan base wasn't overly pleased about, but before the players went their separate ways for the summer, Pacioretty took it upon himself to demand better of everyone in the room. I mentioned that at the end of the year, no one is really holding us accountable. If we have a bad year like this, the city would be half on fire in Montreal. Here in Vegas, it's 80 degrees and it's sunny, we're getting our car wash and getting our organic food and going to play golf. I was kind of like, we've got to police this thing a little better amongst each other. I don't want to say it was a country club, but you have no one from the outside holding you accountable. And that is a really bold comment to make about a hockey team that, I get it, he wasn't on the team when he made these comments. He had been traded a few weeks beforehand, but still, just acknowledging that that's the vibe that goes on in Vegas, it's kind of baffling to me to remember just how successful this team has been ever since stepping into the NHL in 2017-2018. They make the finals, they make the conference finals like 3 out of the 4 times they start out their existence, yet in the locker room, in the city, there isn't really that same accountability, quote-unquote, that you would normally feel in other markets that have that amount of success. Like if Montreal made the conference finals 3 times in 4 seasons, you would see Montreal absolutely explode when they missed the playoffs the next year. And sure, they kind of did do that this season when they lost. They didn't make the playoffs, and it's coming off a season where they went to the finals, but there still was a lot of doom and gloom and a lot of Canadiens fans and media writing articles about how bad everything was and why Dominic Ducharme was a quote-unquote hockey terrorist. There was a lot of accountability for the Canadiens and their players outside the locker room. And so for Vegas, it's very interesting to hear that that is not the case. Now I get it, they're an expansion team. Montreal's been a team for literally 100 years, so there's a lot more pressure and weight and long-term historical fighting that you have to do when you're a member of the Montreal Canadiens versus the Golden Knights. But hockey is hockey, and these are teams in the same league, so it's definitely interesting to note the differences here. This is what Pacioretty said as well when it comes to the players on the team. A lot of these guys haven't played somewhere else, so they don't really know what it's like. I felt myself personally, it always gets the best out of you when my coach or someone else are demanding and they hold you accountable, and I found myself missing that tiny bit when things went wrong this year. And that's a very strange thing to say too, because normally you don't want to go out there, play hockey, you're a part of a team, you're a part of a group of guys, and you don't want to get your coach just lamenting on you every practice, saying, hey, you're doing that bad habit of yours that we told you not to do, you're still doing it. Why are you doing that? It feels bad, right? And so for Pacioretty to go out there and say, yeah, I kind of miss that, because there's none of that here in Vegas. There's nobody holding you accountable for the things that you're doing wrong. I kind of miss being put into a system that enforces growth in that kind of way. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong or whatever, I'm just saying it's an interesting observation to make, right? Especially when it comes to the differences between Vegas and Montreal, and this definitely does not look any better in the grand scheme of things when you talk about Vegas. Overpaying for guys, always trying to get the big fish free agent, always getting the big fish free agent, and trading away other players as a result. You lost out on Dadonov, you lost out on Pacioretty, you lost out on Fleury, you lost out on Schmidt, you've got Stone, you've got Eichel, whatever, but you can't hold these guys and keep them long term because your existence has only been there for 5 years and you're already trading away so many big and talented names. Vegas has been such an interesting story to watch ever since they made the NHL in 2017-18, and now you have Max Pacioretty going out there laying even more dirt onto the grave of the reputation of this organization. So talk to me in the comments all your thoughts about Max Pacioretty and the comments that he made about the Vegas Golden Knights and their lack of accountability outside of the locker room. Do you agree with this sort of assessment that this is a good thing or a bad thing or whatever? Do you think Pacioretty has a point? Do you think he should be talking about something like this? Do you think things are going to be different in Carolina when Pacioretty is going out there scoring, I don't know, 30 goals, 75, 80 points with this new Hurricanes team? Talk in the comments all your thoughts about Vegas. The articles will be linked in the description. Of course, the Yahoo Sports article as well as the podcast interview itself. They're both going to be in the description if you want to go ahead and read and or listen to that. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.